Hello, John.
Yeah, no, whatever.
So today we're going to talk about lectors in Cuba. These were people that read out to factory workers as the workers to kill the boredom. They used to read them newspapers and stories. So there you go. Do you want to tell us about that?
That's right. Yes, it happened in Cuba in the mid 1800s when these people were used to try and improve production, I presume. That'd be one factor, because when people are kind of encouraged with these lectures that perhaps read newspapers and told stories that would be experienced and might have to do some training for it. And so they were able to speak in the language, I presume the Cuban kind of Spanish type language, I think, because Spain had a lot of these countries in South America, and Portugal had Brazil, I think. So they were able to sort of speak in the Spanish, and they could even be coming from Spain. Maybe they had to do some training for it, so as they could be able to impart the sort of information for these factory workers who mightn't be that much educated, shall we say,
Mm-hmm.
and be doing boring jobs. And though you think cigar manufacture wouldn't be quite as boring as some other sort of jobs where you're putting the one thing into like the car manufacturers, just doing the one repetitive job and a noisy factory. So I think the cigars wouldn't have been that noisy, because if they were, they wouldn't hear the fella that was the lecturer. So he'd be yapping away, and so they apparently they rattled knives or something when they approved, and so they were able to their production of the cigars improved, and the owners were quite happy, counting them whatever currency they had at
Mm-hmm.
the time. So all this made for a better production, and with the result that the Cuban cigars, I think, went all over the world. They were highly prized,
You did
and
indeed.
people well to do, shall we say, at those times, there wouldn't be too many ordinary workers smoking these cigars in other countries. It'd be the well to do, because they would have been expensive, and they come in boxes, in special boxes that were nearly like a nice presentation, and they'd have them on their desks. And when somebody come in, it was important to have a cigar. They'd be puffing away as they were doing their business. So business was done different them
Mm-hmm.
times, and there would be plenty of smoke coming around. Now, if you smoke there, they might open the windows and peg you out, because they're all against smoking.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are, in a way, and you're up the creek without a paddle from the point of view of smoking.
Yeah.
So nobody now is smoking. If they are, they have to go outside, and then they have to have some kind of receptacles that they can put their cigarettes or cigars, for that matter, in. So it has all changed, hasn't it, as regards the business of the lectors and smoking. But cigars were always a sort of a prize that depended on their manufacture, and where they were manufactured. They had a sort of value in that area. As a matter of fact, there was a cigar factory in Mullingar. Can't think of the name of it now at the minute, but I remember seeing it. But then it must have moved somewhere else, because the factory changed to some other production of some other type of products, but not cigars. But they had a cigar factory in Mullingar. So I wonder, did they? No, they would have had music, because in the United States they were making cigars as well. They seem to be very fond of cigars. So and they had these think lectors, and then they weren't too keen on them, because they were. This was after the communism took over in 1917 in Russia, and their insidious old philosophy spread, and so people were in a way was brainwashed about any benefits that workers seem to be gaining more power, they thought, but there weren't, of course. It was the worst crowd now that was in charge, and workers didn't have the rights that they thought they were going to have.
Hmm.
You see, slogans are all very well, but it's the reality that counts, isn't it?
That's it. Now you were mentioning to me as well, and you made a very good point that this was before radio. Radio would have came about if this was around 1865, radio would have been invented about 1890. So,
Aye. But then in America, they were using these ones as well because they had a sort of a human touch, and people kind of liked that type of thing. But then they were promoting communism, and then there was strikes and there was violence. The workers suffered a lot of violence from the authorities and that type of thing. And so this was 1931, not too long after the Wall Street crash in 1929. So there was a lot of people put on the unemployed, and there wasn't any of this social welfare that could cushion it. As a matter of fact, soup kitchens become the only sustenance that they were able to get in 1929, and that probably affected the business of in these cigar factories or any other factory that people were then lucky then in 1931 to have jobs. It was the strike with these workers, but they lost out and they went back. But then the radio started coming in, and it was music while you work. And in Britain, the BBC had a program for workers every half 3 to half 3 or something, or every day music while you work. And there was lovely music played, and I remember listening to it because I worked in London for a period, and I had an opportunity to hear this type of thing. And even in this country, we were able to hear it on the BBC radio. And so that was something that spread. I don't know if it's still now going. I think there is. It's not so much music while you work, like the good music that they played now is to have some other type of items, I think, or did they have anything? It depends on where you're working because some companies they want workers to be there nearly all the time, and they have to sign out if they want to go to the toilet or something.
mhm,
And then they have to sign out. So over the period of time, if that's what they're doing too much, it might affect their promotional prospects and that. So companies become, what's this the word? They can become a bit ruthless,
mhm,
and the business of workers and their respect due to them, which is a good policy. It doesn't work. Now, another thing that occurred in as regards workers, and for years it was when you went for to get employment, it was the personnel department you went to, which was, for the workers, and they were pretty good. And you got what you were entitled to, and so on and so forth, and when you could be joining a pension scheme, which in some cases was contributory, which is the best. If it's non-contributory, it's no good to you when you leave that company. You can't bring it with you. So workers then were had sometimes better treatment, but sometimes worse treatment. Now some companies treated workers pretty good, and I know the John Lewis Group in Britain. When a person joins that uh, company, which is in the clothing business, I think, or drapery stores, they're entitled to be shareholders.
mhm,
So they have a share in the company, and so therefore they're appreciated, and it's reflected in the way they work. And that is a good policy for any company to adopt, much like the cooperative movement, which everybody shared in. So companies that are forward thinking and respect their workers, which is the only basis for dealing with anyone. If they do that, and give them an opportunity to have a share in the business, and that they're not going to be exploited, then you're going to get, that's going to be a good company. And some companies are doing that. Some companies are doing that and doing it very successful. And it's a great policy. So when we come from the lectures to the music where you work, and we don't hear that business of music where you work now too much, I don't think. Um, the society moves on, but they want to keep the values in some ways that's beneficial to all, I
No.
think.
What the thing is, that was so that was 1865. You could imagine, right? Okay, if you said to a
Mm,
company today, if you said to Microsoft or if you said to Google, bring in a lector and put him on his big platform, because they were always raised from the other workers. They were raised up so they
that's
could
right.
hear their voice, right? But you could imagine Microsoft or Google having a lector. They'd look as if you'd six heads, but it actually would be a great
You
idea.
would. Well, you see, I think if the philosophy in the companies, and it's not unfortunately in these information companies, that philosophy doesn't. They want to get the maximum out of them with without the business of the sort of treatment that a, a, a progressive company would adopt, and that is to respect their workers
Yeah,
and to treat them accordingly and give them a share in the business. But these ones that seem to be so obsessed with their own power that workers take a back seat. And in these companies, workers are not as satisfied with their work as they could be. They don't have the freedom to express their opinions, which should happen in a good company, express their opinions and be appreciated by the philosophy of the company. And I think some of these internet companies leave a bit to be desired there, while they provide a good service for customers in that sense. You can find out things that you mightn't otherwise find out.
yeah,
Um, that's something to bear in mind. And I think if the fundamental philosophy of any good company is to respect their workers and treat them accordingly, that will be a successful company and will last.
that's it. So that's lectors. Lectors. When people think of lectors, they think of a church, a lector in a church, that
They do.
reads out things, But that's not what we're talking about, of course.
No, no, but I suppose it was based on that type of thing because Cuba at that time would have been a Catholic country.
Okay,
90% of the people would have been practicing Catholics. And so that's a unifying force. And but now it's a communist country, and we don't know what's going on. There's difficulties, I understand, and the communism has a philosophy that looks good on the outside, but in reality is bad on the inside.
that's right. Especially for the middle class.
It's good in the inside you want to be, and more than the outside.
Yeah,
So it sounds good, workers' rights, but it winds up they don't have any rights.
that's it.
It's the party. It's the party. They're like the supreme purveyor of what they want people to be. In other words, they want to control them.
That's
And
it.
that's not a way to run any society. The democratic way is the best if it's done right and life is valued. If you interfere with life in any shape, way, or form, then life is not valued, and it morphs into something else. So I think the fundamental philosophy is respect life, respect your workers, respect life, and treat people with respect, all people,
That's it.
and give them the safety of the state that they happen to be living in, that they're not going to be their what the values that they have been abused. And unfortunately, that's a factor nowadays. And I think it affects all, not just workers, all society, because you have to have goodness as the basis for the civilized society. If to stray from that, then there's question marks.
That's it. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Oliver.